Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to our weekly press conference. We will have somewhat of a short one today, but we wanted to make sure we gave an update on the WERAP funds and the WERAP program. As many who have been following this issue know, the eviction moratorium has now expired, and our state continues to process applications for housing relief funds for those who have been negatively impacted economically by the COVID pandemic. So here in Wichita, we took a different approach. Instead of just having the state do it on our behalf, we actually had our housing department take on this task, and we are going to get an update that will show that it's a good thing we did because they're doing an amazing job. At last count, Kansas had distributed as a state a little less than 12% of its relief funds, and I think nationally the average is about 11%. However, here in Wichita, our Housing and Community Service Director, Sally Stang, is leading the charge on housing relief, and we have distributed over 85% of our relief funds. So that's over $9.2 million of first-round federal funds that were designated for relief going back into our community, back into our neighbors who need this money because they have been negatively impacted by COVID economically through no fault of their own, which has a great economic impact for all of Wichita, where people aren't spending down their savings accounts. They're not racking up high interest credit cards. Instead, it's a good example of how our taxpayer money in Washington is coming back into our community to help those who need it. So here to provide us more of a detailed update is our housing director, Sally Stang, and she will talk about not only the eviction moratorium, but also WERAP, and stick around as well for questions at the end if people have that. So, Director Stang.
Thank you, Mayor Whipple. Thank you, everybody. I'm happy to be here once again. Seems like I'm on a 3 or 4 week rotation with this program. We are very excited to announce that we have hit 85% expenditure of our round one funding. So it is just over $9.2 million. We've been able to assist over 1,500 families that were facing eviction by getting them caught up not only with their rental arrears, but any utility arrears, as well as being able to pay rent prospectively. So that was the real game changer with this program. It wasn't just a set dollar limit or just to get people caught up so that they could turn around and end up being in arrears again. So if qualifying families can receive under our program up to 15 months of assistance. They obviously have to income qualify and have income less than 80% of the area median income. They have to be housing unstable, which means they have to have rental or utility arrears, or be living in substandard housing or in a domestic violence situation that makes their housing unstable. So it's been a whirlwind of 6 months as we've been working through this program. We've also been able to provide assistance. So we've served over 690 different landlords have received funding through the WERAP program so far, and 8 different utility providers. So as you can tell, this funding is making a huge impact, not just helping to keep families in their homes, but helping landlords who were suffering through this whole crisis, help them get caught up on the bills that they also have to pay. So we're really excited that we've hit that milestone. We had a requirement under the grant to expend 65% of our round one funding by September 30th. We're at 85% right now, and we expect to fully expend the round one funding by the end of September. Then we'll roll into our round two funding, which was just over $9.2 million. And start being able to use those funds to continue to assist families, those that remain on the waiting list and those that are a part of the program. So as we talked about being able to provide prospective rent assistance, it requires that every 3 months we have to recertify whether a family still meets program requirements, still is income eligible, still is housing unstable, in order to pay an additional 3 months forward. So the whole time the team's been working through new applications, we've been working on recertifications at the same time, and there's hundreds of families that have actually been recertified for the second 3 month of prospective rent. So it's been very, very, very busy, to say the least. And I stand for any specific questions that you might have. Okay, thank you.
And just do want to, again, point out that I believe Wichita is the only city in the entire state of Kansas who decided to take this program on ourselves because we have incredible staff who not only pull this off to the extent in which now we have exceeded the requirement in order to get that next installment of federal funds, but gone much past that requirement and done so in a way that other cities haven't been able to do. So it just is another testament to the fact that our city has some of the greatest people working hard every day for our community. And again, this is much more than just helping people in need. This is or prevention of homelessness. This is a huge social service aspect to this as well. And it's really about keeping our neighbors strong through these economic hardships because of the pandemic. So again, thank you, Ms. Stang, for not only doing such a good job, but really doing a better job than most other cities that we're comparable to, just really exceeded expectations. The next thing I'm going to talk about is just our fall classes, just putting in another plug for our city arts and our parks and recreation departments. So they offer classes that give you everything from learning a new language to indoor gardening classes, or even learning the basics of karate. There's something for everyone. So please check out our guide at wichita.gov/evolve. And just a reminder that next Tuesday, September 7th, is the Dog Days of Summer at College Hill Park. Small dogs swim will be at 5:30 to 6 p.m. Large dogs swim will be at 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. The chemical levels will be safe for dogs, but not for humans. So people will only be able to go into the water about up to their knees. So a large portion of the proceeds will actually benefit the Kansas Humane Society. So we want folks to come out, not only enjoy this event, but also know that it's for a good cause. The suggested donation is $10. Again, it's to help the Kansas Humane Society, which is an organization that we know does great work here in Wichita. So with that, I'll take questions, and we have our housing folks on for questions as well.
So can you comment on the story earlier in the week about the city and the guns and ammo? I guess your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting. The law changed in 2014. Years later, I think that it's driving some interesting conversation about how different cities are fulfilling the requirements of that law. Here in the city of Wichita, it used to cost us money to dispose of guns that were confiscated, or not all guns, but many guns that were confiscated during different type of crime scenes, and it used to cost us money to grind those down and to dispose of them, and now we're able to actually make a little bit of money off of it while still ensuring that we're following the proper procedures so that those firearms get into the hands of lawful citizens who can pass a background check, who can go through the different requirements necessary to be able to obtain a weapon.
The sheriff was pretty outspoken that he knows for a fact that sometimes these guns end up back on the street again, and the crime is concerned happens. I guess your thoughts on that?
Well, if he knows for a fact, you should talk to the media so we can get a story about it and actually have that information brought to our attention. From my understanding, we've seen that in other examples in other states and other cities. So far, I haven't seen any direct evidence that a weapon has been seized and then sold here from our city has wound up back into our community and used dangerously. To be honest, majority of guns that are stolen wind up in crimes here in Wichita. So the fact that these weapons are actually being processed professionally, and I think that's another good part of that story. We kind of look at the idea that we're only getting a little less than 50% of the sale. Well, we'll forego a certain amount of percentage if it's going to ensure that these are properly sold, that we're not just setting up a tent somewhere and selling them out the back of our trunk. We want to make sure to take that extra effort so that professionals, people who work in a space who are licensed, whose license is on the line, that these guns get back into the hands of law-abiding citizens and off the streets of Wichita for people who might not be law-abiding.
So I assume it'd just be like buying it from a local store, and you still gotta have a background check and all that.
So it's a national clearinghouse that we contract with here at the city. So you would have, if you buy a firearm in Kansas, you would have to, of course, follow the Kansas laws and procedures. But I'm unaware if, because they are national, if they follow additional procedures as well. But we do know that the goal is to ensure that the lawful process is followed to make sure that folks who shouldn't or legally can't have weapons aren't able to get their hands on weapons.
Sir, question. Yes, sir. How are you doing today?
Okay.
All right, good deal. Jason with Wichita TV7 and the Wichita Newsroom. I have a question. You may not have the answer to it. It kind of goes along with housing, but I just want to address it. First of all, I want to say that you guys are doing an excellent job from what our readers and viewers have been saying in handling the pandemic and handling the divide in the community. So I just wanted to let you know that that has been coming to our newsroom.
We're going to get a lot of compliments, so I appreciate that.
Problem. Now, the question that I do have, though, is there were some local media outlets that had put a story out that were saying that there were 1,000 kids that had came up missing from the Wichita public schools. And this was kind of confusing and a kind of a eyebrow-raising situation that was kind of raised, so we looked into it. We had some parents that had reached out to us and were also telling us that they were having a door-to-door check from some of the teachers from schools, and I believe that some of the other news outlets had actually reported this and put it out on some of their Twitter feeds and also on some of their news stations. The question that I'm having is that some of the parents were saying that their kids weren't missing, that they were actually doing homeschooling. And so some of them were enrolling their kids, some of them weren't, some because due to the uncertainty which behind what schools were doing and things of that nature. The question that they were asking, though, is that how far is this going to lead into home welfare checks? Are these considered home welfare checks, or is this something that eventually that can be tied into a truancy issue, or does it just have to do with the attendance? And this may actually be a question for Alicia Thompson, but just as the city, with the public schools, just kind of want to see if you had an inside scoop on that.
No, and really good question. And the fact is, you're right, this is in the realm of the school board and Alicia Thompson and Dr. Thompson and our USC 259. However, I will say that, we are seeing a lot of I guess, shakeup when it comes to getting back into the schools. So it doesn't surprise me that some folks might be had the intention of bringing their kids back into the public schools, saw the spikes in the numbers, saw the elected officials not putting in the policies that were recommended by our health professionals, and might have decided to keep their kids home for homeschooling, and maybe that communication didn't make it back to the school. Overall, though, in the state of Kansas and really in America, you have a constitutional right to a free and appropriate education. And with that, and that right belongs to the student. So if there are people who are not getting an education, particularly kids, and it is in the interest of this school district to check up on those kids, to see, first of all, are they okay? I think that teachers, and as a dad who watched my son on a Zoom call with his kindergarten teacher last year when abruptly they had to stop school. Zoom. Oh my goodness, I said the word Zoom and now I think it's opening Zoom. I'll tell you that no one cares about teachers, as much as parents and as much as, or students as much as teachers and parents. I remember our Miss, I guess I won't say her name, but my kid's teacher was just crying on the phone because she couldn't say goodbye to the students and want to get face-to-face with them, make sure they were okay during this pandemic. So it doesn't surprise me that there are checks, people knocking on doors to make sure, one, is the kid okay, two, what is the educational plan, because, again, we want to make sure that every kid in Wichita has access to a free and appropriate education. It's like the first time ever my Google app ever recognized my voice, by the way. Of course, it happens when we're doing a press conference and live on Facebook. But good question. Again, it's a little bit outside my what the city does. But it's a good plug, frankly. If you are homeschooling this year, if you are someone who's holding a kid at your house because because of COVID or any other reasons, keep in mind, as a city, we want to partner with you when it comes to enriching your child's education with different activities. So again, wichita.gov/evolve. If you're not doing homeschool and you decided not to do you're not going to have access to traditional gym class or that type of environment, or even traditional art class or that type of environment, at the city level, we want to partner with you by having our classes and our opportunities open to those students so that they can not only be safe, but also get the most out of a year in which their education might be a little less traditional. All right. Thanks a lot, everyone. If there's any more questions, let me know, and be happy to chat with you guys throughout the week.